Oh, good morning, good morning. Another chilly October morning. There's frost all over my yard. We're going to do a quick video here on just discussing gun control, because obviously with the events that just happened 2 days ago now, it's going to be flying all over the media screens and in our face for probably the next month and a half, right? So, people need to not act like the world or this country is a controlled environment. So let's say you have a kid who tends to put things in their mouth. The obvious solution is like small choking hazard things, right? Let's say it's it's a 7-month-old baby. So the obvious solution is to minimize all the little choking hazards that child can have access to, thus eliminating the risk, right? This is simple A plus B equals C solution. Make sure that your kid is not choking on something as soon as you turn your back. That applies in that situation and other small situations like that, same thing could be said with toddlers and scissors. Well, you put all the scissors up in the house where the toddler can't reach them, and you eliminate the risk of the toddler getting hold of something sharp and accidentally cutting themselves. That does not work in a national sense, right? We can't say, well, guns have the ability to hurt people, so let's eliminate guns. If we never manufactured a gun in this country, if we didn't have a gun culture, possibly you could make some headway in that. The cat's out of the bag. It's impossible. We are the #1 world's gun manufacturer. We have a very large military, tons of veterans, tons of law enforcement. We have massive amounts of guns that have already been sold legally and illegally in this country. They say, they say 300 million, firearms exist. One for every person roughly, which is complete nonsense. It's at least 3 times that. So you have close to 1 billion firearms in this country that are out there. We have a massive history of fighting wars and being involved in wars. And we're built upon the Second Amendment ever since the formation of this country and separation from Great Britain, right? So to say that we need to impose gun control and think that would have 1% effect on crime is absolutely insane. People need to stop looking at this like a little black and white issue that they're dealing with their kids. It is not. This is a national issue that we want to resolve in an elementary fashion, and it's absolutely insane. It's backwards thinking. All that would do would be to criminalize the 150 million law-abiding gun owners in this country and not allow them to protect their family in the event of something occurring. So we know very well that criminals are criminals for what reason? Because they don't obey the law, right? So by putting any further gun restrictions, by just saying, okay, listen, you can't carry any handguns. Nobody can carry any handguns. Nobody can carry any rifles outside of 4-capacity bolt-action hunting rifles, and that's it. We're cutting the line there. It has to be sporting. Then you have to get a sporting license. So maybe something similar to what you might have in like Germany or something. And thinking that you can, #1, police that in any way, shape, or form. Has anybody looked at Chicago? Chicago's got some of the most strict gun laws in the country, and yet they are filling the morgues every weekend over there. So that is not a resolution to any kind of situation. And there's just no way to conceive that if you start actually critically thinking about it, that's going to affect positively affect the gun violence in this country. It's completely asinine. and this is all Las Vegas shooting aside, okay? We're not going to sit here and we're not, doing gun control focused on what happened at Las Vegas, because this is a reoccurring issue that pops up all the time, and for multiple different reasons, whether it's inner city shootings or whether it's a school shooting or whether it's a mass shooting, doesn't matter. This is what hits the front page and somebody throws their anti-gun agenda in at it. But it's basically like trying to put out a bonfire with a garden hose. It's absurd. So then we have to look at, okay, well, what are the other options? What are other ways to keep gun violence down? One is to stop hoarding people into urban centers and then depriving them of being able to make decent incomes, because that is a breeding ground for crime. People who can't afford to support themselves legally revert to illegal things in order to make a living. Now, you're always going to have bad apples. The guns are not walking around on the street just randomly pulling their triggers. They're inert objects, just like a hammer, just like a butcher knife, just like a sword, just like anything else, and they can be used for good or evil. That is why law enforcement has firearms, right? You don't expect law enforcement to go fight crime or defend themselves with a taser. That is absurd as well. So your force evil has to be able to be met with good in an equal, if not greater, force, and that's why we have, Second Amendment rights. That's why we conceal carry. That's why law enforcement carries. So, other options we've talked about in the past and have been discussed are, in the event of schools, is having trained personnel that are able to be heavily trained by a sheriff's department, and you have 5 or 6, whether it's vice principal, whether it's a superintendent, whether it's your gym teacher, history teacher, whomever is deemed to be an extraordinarily responsible educator who will go through whatever it is, 8-12 week gun safety course sponsored by the local police department. And that can help be a deterrent. If kids know that they might take a bullet quickly and not accomplish their goal, some of these kids, and also it's to expand the ability for these kids to have an outlet. We just funnel kids through the school system, and a lot of times these kids fall through the cracks. So, but even with all that, and even with extraordinarily strict gun control, you're still going to have some of these issues. There's no way around it. Somebody who is a completely law-abiding citizen clears background checks, clears fingerprint checks, clears mental health history, whatever it is, depending on the state. If they haven't committed a violent crime, but it's still something on their mind, they're going to be able to be, a first-time offender, right? That first-time offense might be pretty catastrophic. And, when you get all these crazy, mentally stunted liberals who run around and go gun control, it's almost like they haven't thought the thing through. It's like they just want an agenda pushed because guns make them uncomfortable, but it's not going to solve any of the problems that they perceive will be solved. It's not going to happen. It's impossible. We saw this with when they did prohibition in alcohol, right? We had a deep culture of getting drunk. And what happened with prohibition? Well, a bunch of people who were normally just accountants were going down to illegal speakeasies and getting hammered. And eventually that law had to be, changed, because you had a bunch of people who were just your run-of-the-mill, everyday business guys or mechanics or whatever it was, trying to sneak behind the law to get drunk. So now you would just have what? You would have, a guy that works down at Dave's Automotive, or that owns this restaurant over here, or works at this car dealership over here, or does accounting down at your local accounting firm. All these people that I run into on a daily basis who conceal carry, all of a sudden they're felons, even though they're tax-paying, law-abiding, respectable citizens who, in the event of a shooting, would be able to come to everybody else's defense. This is kind of, I understand this is kind of a touchy video, but when you jump on the anti-gun bandwagon, and I'm taking this from a perspective of not pro-gun or anti-gun, I'm just looking strictly at what reality is, what the facts would be. It's pretty cut and dry that we would not, be able to curb any kind of violence. We would just fill our jails more with people who weren't criminals before, simply because they're exercising their right to be able to defend themselves. The amount of guns we have in this country, especially if you eliminate the impoverished inner cities, the amount of gun crime we have is extraordinarily low, considering how many guns we have out there. You go to states like New Hampshire, you go to states like Montana, Idaho, Vermont, and then you take away suicides, because I'm sorry, suicides do not classify as gun violence. I don't care if they used a gun. Gun violence is somebody using the firearm in an aggressive manner towards another person in a method that is not considered defending themselves, but being an aggressor, right? So you take away suicides from those numbers, and it's extraordinarily low. I've said this before. You go and try to rob a house in my neighborhood, you are probably going to get shot. Everybody with me, there's probably 10 times more firearms in a 5-mile circle around my house than there is humans. Nobody's gotten shot recently. The only homicide I've seen wasn't even near my house. It's down by my restaurant, and that was a domestic violence issue. That was somebody who had a kid, they had a kid, and she actually used to work for me. They had a kid together. Guy was pretty mentally unstable. I think they were getting separated or something along those lines. So you had this a-hole who decided to, take the mother of his child's life and then turn the gun on himself. So, again, that's a domestic issue, which, if you turn the guns back, if you look at gun crime and outside of suicides, domestic issues are generally the next highest occurrence of such things happening, and extraordinarily unfortunate. But you had the situation where two people are in close proximity and one person is a little wacko, and this is somebody who didn't have a previous record as well, but clearly had something going on upstairs that wasn't quite right, and poor girl was the victim, and the daughter now is living with grandparents, obviously, has no parents. So, that kind of tragedy, and that's the third case of that I know about. Somebody even closer to me had a similar instance. The people I know are the grandparents, and they're taking care of the granddaughter, and I think it's been like 8 years, maybe 10 years since that started. And so, they're just raising her as if she was their own, because she is now. But those kind of issues are in every country all around the world, and they're terrible, and no amount of laws are ever going to prevent that from happening. So we need to think of this more reasonably, and I have a feeling more of these kind of instances are going to occur. This one smells really fishy. I didn't make a video about it yet because I was waiting yesterday for more information, and the longer I wait, the more notorious BS is starting to come out about all of it. And not that people weren't shot, because they obviously were, but the narrative that is being shoved down our throat is looking more and more like a bucket of hogwash. It's nonsense. There's a lot more to this, and there's a lot of people out there who are doing the research and showing the video, showing all these different reports, and they're putting all this information together for you. So if you have any questions about it, you can start to find this information now. And I don't know if I'll ever do a video on it, because it's just something I don't really want to touch. But I'm definitely going to be abreast of what the real motivation was, and how many people were actually involved, who was actually behind it. This is an extraordinarily complex mass shooting that is being forced down our throat as this one retired person who is the world's greatest shooter of all time and was able to do all this catastrophic things, which is it's crazy. I don't buy it for a minute that narrative is the correct narrative. I'm not questioning the events, but I'm just talking about the full narrative. I think we need to wait a little longer, get some more information. But yes, gun control, cat's out of the bag. We're a rebellious country. Our country was founded upon fighting a war and exercising Second Amendment, where guys who were working in the blacksmith shop were running off to the battlefield. And that is never going to change. It's not going to change. More proactive discussions need to be had rather than a bunch of super liberal soccer moms and media going out there saying, well, we need to ban all guns. You know, no one should be able to have high capacity automatic weapons. Number one, you can't get an automatic weapon. They're semi-automatic rifles, okay? And you know, military is the one who has automatic weapons. Ordinary citizenry, it's extraordinarily hard to get. There's a lot of licensing. Same with suppressors or anything like that. You know, you need to send in your fingerprints, run your background, send in $200 fee, all this kind of stuff. And in many states, it's a lot more strict than it is here, and it hasn't really done too much, right? So we'll see, but keep that in mind the next time you're jumping up and down saying, you know, well, we need to get rid of these guns. It's impossible, okay? It can't happen. So the only thing that would do is raise crime even more, because criminals don't listen to gun laws anyway. And the market would be flooded with black market firearms even more than it is now. So at least now the majority of citizenry are going in, running a background check, and picking up their firearm from a authorized dealer. So that's it for this video. Do something else a little bit on a lighter note later today. Appreciate it. Thank you.